Hello, thanks for joining me. I hope you find what I have to say both interesting and informative. My name is Matt, I'm a retired engineer and I've always been fascinated by the history of the Roman world. The recent discovery of what is known as the Gallo-Roman Dodecahedron, which was found in Norton Disney in the Midlands of England, has only caused more speculation as to the true purpose of what these items were used for, and has baffled both amateur and professional archaeologists alike. This brings the total current number of Gallo-Roman dodecahedrons found in the UK to 33. And about 130 now worldwide. I'm sure you'll be aware of the many existing theories as to what this object could possibly be used for, and I'm not proposing to cover any of these options here, as I understand that everyone is entitled to their own opinions on the subject. I'd like you to join me on an adventure of discovery where we will reveal the enigmatic purpose of the Roman dodecahedron, which I think you will find more fascinating than you can possibly imagine. So relax, sit right back, and let's jump right in. I will explain in detail what this item was used for, supported by the facts of what we already know. You will see why the material of construction used was bronze or a copper alloy. You will see why most were found in military installations, forts or camps. I will explain why some were found with coins or other treasure. I will explain why some have been found in temples and graves. You will see the dodecahedron shows no signs of wear. You'll see why some were found with traces of wax attached to them. You will see why there are different size holes in each face, which range from 6mm to 40mm. I will explain the reason for why these rings are found around some of the holes. I will explain the geographical bias of finds and why most were found in northwestern Europe. You will understand the purpose for the knobs or nodules found at each corner. I will explain how it was used and why the dodecahedron geometry was used for this purpose. You will also understand why there are no written or pictorial references to the dodecahedron in history. It's a well-known fact that Julius Caesar used cipher systems to communicate orders and messages with his legions during the 1st century BC. Very briefly, there are two main types of ciphers used around this time. A transposition cipher, where all the letters of the message are just mixed up somehow, and a substitution cipher, where a letter of the message is substituted for a letter of the code. The first documented use of a substitution cipher for military purposes appears in Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, where Caesar describes how he sent a coded message to Cicero, who was besieged and on the verge of surrendering to an enemy. In this instance, he used a substitution cipher where he replaced the Roman letters with Greek letters, and this rendered the message unintelligible to the enemy surrounding Cicero's camp. Later, thanks to Suetonius, who wrote the lives of the Caesars in the 2nd century AD, we have a detailed description of one of the types of substitution ciphers used by Julius Caesar, where he simply replaced each letter of the message with a letter that is 3 places further down the alphabet. This was known as the Caesar shift cipher. But after a period of successful use, the code breakers were able to break the Caesar shift cipher easily by what is known as the brute force technique. The code breakers eventually realised that there are only 22 different combinations of the 23 letters of the classical Latin alphabet, which was then in use at this time, which needed to be checked to decode the message's meaning. This could be achieved in a relatively short space of time, and the original meaning of the message could be revealed. I do not pretend to be an expert in the subject of cryptanalysis and codes or ancient languages, and there are many sources both in libraries and on the internet for people who require further information in these fields. All we need to appreciate from our perspective is that the classical Roman or Latin alphabet, as it was known at this time, consisted of only 23 letters. The letters J, U and W were not present until much later in history. Over a period of time, these 3 letters were finally added, and we have the 26 letters we now use in the modern world. The use of cipher-coded messages was nothing new to the Romans during the 1st century BC to the 4th century AD. For a military application, a cipher coding system needs to be secure, simple and swift. It needs to be secure to ensure the message remains a secret from the enemy. It needs to be simple so that it can be used repeatedly in challenging conditions under the stress of battle. It needs to be swift to use in both coding and decoding processes. As a result, code makers realised that a stronger cipher was required to ensure the security of a message. So what is now called the random Caesar shift cipher was developed. This is where all the letters of the ciphertext are randomly mixed up, giving an absolutely enormous number of combinations to the ciphertext that would be impossible for the enemy to decode in the time for the information in the message to be useful to them. The number of possible combinations available in the 23-letter random Caesar shift cipher is 2.5 times 10 to the power 22, which is an absolutely enormous number. The early code makers knew that the random Caesar shift method was big enough to be useful to them. But how could this practically be achieved? To show you how the system worked, I'd like you to imagine for a moment that my name is Pavlo and I am the station commander of the Vindelander Fort, and we have a serious, immediate problem. First of all, I'm going to look at my area map to see who can render me some assistance. I'm now going to send a coded message to a fellow commander 1 day's ride away. I'm now going to prepare my plain text message to him. Please note that the W does not exist in the classical Latin alphabet, and we are substituting that with simply a V. I now reach for my message coding equipment. This consists of a plain text wheel, a selection of cipher wheels, and a Roman Dodecahedron. An important point to appreciate that all the cipher wheels each have a different random code order and a different central axle size to fit different size holes on the dodecahedron. I choose the correct coding cipher wheel to contact Decimus. I check where the coding cipher wheel needs to fit on the dodecahedron. Next, I place the plain text wheel on the dodecahedron with the star at the starting point. As you can see, the plain text wheel is simply made to fit all 12 faces of the dodecahedron and consists of the 23 letters of the classic Roman alphabet in alphabetical order plus the 2 null characters. This makes a total of 25 characters in total that can be used to send a message. As you can see, the coding cipher wheel we are using to send the message also has 23 letters of the classic Latin alphabet spread randomly around the wheel plus the 2 null characters, making a total of 25 characters also. The purpose of the 2 null characters fulfills a number of purposes to keep the 2 coding wheels in register. Now, for this to work, multiples of 5 characters are required. Now 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 are no good to us, as there are 23 characters in the classic Latin alphabet, so the 2 nulls make us up to the 25 characters needed to make the system work. The first null you will see is the diamond with the dot, and this helps to conceal double letters such as double T and double E in the message, as you will see. The second null, which is a star, gives us an initial starting position for the 2 coding wheels, and this helps to error-proof the system and keep it simple for all users to understand. As you will see, both nulls will actually appear in the encoding and decoding processes, but are easily resolved in the final message. Checking that the 2 wheels are in the correct starting position, we can now start to encode the message, and we need to move the coding cipher wheel 1 place clockwise after every word has been encoded. The code is written on a simple wooden tablet, very much similar in size and shape and material to the Vindolanda tablets. We can now start encoding the message to Decimus. H is O. A is T. I is G. L is F. New word. D, diamond with the dot. E, star. C is a V. The encoding is now complete, and all we have to do now is to prepare the message for sending to Decimus. Here is a close-up of the encoded message, and you can see that it is completely unintelligible. You can see that the double T in the word attacked and the double O in the word soonest are easily concealed in the encoded message. This is done by using the first null character method I mentioned earlier to disguise the double letters in the message. You can also see that the two A's in attacked are encoded into the same letter in that word, which is a T. But the two A's in the word Vindolanda are encoded into a different code letter, which is an X. This is because the code wheel has stepped on by 2 places. I should also point out that the technique of frequency analysis, which monitors the number of times that a letter is used within a coded message to break the code, was not discovered until the 9th century by Arabian codebreakers. The encoded message is now placed into what can only be described as a wooden cartridge or envelope. You'll notice the hole in the wooden message board, which I will explain the function of this to you presently. The message now has to be sealed, so I want you to imagine that I'm pouring hot molten wax into this area. We now take the dodecahedron, complete with the existing coding wheels, and we place it into the hot molten wax. To form an imprint. As you can see, the molten wax has taken a perfect imprint of the bottom hole on the dodecahedron, including the 2 concentric circles in this instance. Unfortunately, I was not able to use hot molten wax for this purpose, as it would have seriously damaged my plastic resin dodecahedron. The hot molten wax has now dried, and the message is fully sealed in the wooden envelope because the wax has penetrated the hole in the wooden message, sealing it to the back of the envelope, and we can now send this message to Decimus. And now I would like you to imagine that my name is Decimus. I am the station commander at Epiacum, and I have just received a message. Well, first of all, in examining the message, I can see that the wax seal is still intact. This tells me that no one has seen or copied the contents of the message, so I know that the message is still secure between the sender and the receiver. I reach for my coding equipment and, using the dodecahedron, I need to ascertain which hole fits the wax seal accurately. I now put my plain text wheel in place. I now search for the coding wheels that fit the top hole accurately. Because all the dodecahedrons in our section are drilled identically to one another, I now know that I've got the correct wheel to start decoding the message. I can now break the seal and remove the message. As you saw, the second purpose of the hole in the message board was to assist in removing the message from the cartridge. I now ensure that both stars are in the correct starting position on the two wheels. Because coding keys, keywords or passwords are not required with this system, it is very easy and quick to start decoding the message, remembering to move the code wheel one place after decoding each word. O is a H. T is an A. G is an I. F is an L. New word, move one space. Diamond with a dot is a D. Star is an E. V is a C. You can see where the first null is used twice in the message. It just needs to be substituted for the previous letter. Pavlo is in trouble. We must ride before the sun rises. You can see that the whole system is basically very simple, using things that could easily have been made from wood, that could easily and quickly be destroyed or burnt in the nearest brazier. All except the dodecahedrons that have survived to this day. You can also see that the coding system works around the relationship between the unique layout and size of the holes in the dodecahedron and the size of the pegs on the coded wheels. And the random order of the different alphabets. Communication networks can be person to person, they can be station to station, or a combination of the two. The dodecahedron has 12 sides, so it can accommodate 12 different code wheels. So one of the real advantages of the system is that if a code wheel was captured, lost or stolen, the whole communication network would not be compromised, as a message could still be relayed by a different route. The dodecahedron was made from bronze or a copper alloy because this was the best material for the task. It had to be strong, stiff, and be capable of keeping its geometry during constant use, which included it being immersed into hot molten wax. Wood, lead or tin etc. would not have been suitable for this application. Most have been found in military installations, forts or camps, because the Roman army adopted the use of the dodecahedron coding system, and this is where most of the secret message traffic was prevalent during military operations. Why were some found with coins or treasure, and why were some found in temples and graves? It's unlikely that the dodecahedron coding system was invented by the military, but more likely a mathematician, a scientist or an engineer, and not necessarily from within the Roman Empire itself. The inventors would want to sell the system to anyone who could pay for it, and this would include business people, merchants, the aristocracy, and even the religious fraternity, all who would have had the requirement to send secure messages around their networks, groups or organisations. Perhaps you could imagine priests coding and decoding messages as a service to the public, for donations or sacrifices. Perhaps you can imagine the dodecahedron as being a status symbol, similar to a mobile phone is today, which can be used for messaging people easily and securely. And this is why they are featured as grave goods, perhaps giving the deceased the ability to contact people in the afterlife. In today's world, the charity Age Concern polled 100,000 people and found that people wanting to be buried with their mobile phones was the second most popular request. Messages could be sent via the cursus publicus, a kind of Roman state postal system, which the Romans adopted from the Persians. but there was no guarantee as to the security of the message, and it was very expensive to use. A message could be sent by slave resources, but for the message to remain a secret between the sender and the receiver, a coded ciphers system was the only way to ensure this. The dodecahedron shows no signs of wear because all the other moving parts of the system are made of wood and wax, which are both softer materials than the dodecahedron material itself. Traces of wax have been found attached to the dodecahedron because of the wax sealing process we saw earlier. It is unlikely that any trace of the wax from the manufacture by the lost wax process, as this would only be detectable at a molecular level. We saw that there are different size holes in each face of the dodecahedron to accommodate the 12 different sizes of code wheel hubs, each with a different random alphabet. There are rings found around some of the holes for two reasons. The only critical decision a decoder has to make is identifying that the correct holes line up with the impression on the wax seal, and the relationship between the holes and the rings assist him in doing this. Also, the rings assist the craftsman during the hole drilling process to keep the holes concentric and on centre. As can be seen from this fragment of a dodecahedron found in England, the rings almost form grooves that almost perforate the face and could be used to accommodate changing the hole size easily if required. Why were most found around Northern Europe? Looking at the map of finds, the first thing to appreciate is that the fastest and most secure way of sending an important message is by boat. Using boats or ships, messages could travel quickly and safely around the Mediterranean, the Black Sea and the coast of Hispania. Much of the lands of Gaul, Germania and Britannia were regarded as hostile territory, where lone messengers were subject to ambush and capture by guerrilla-type forces. Substantial effort and activity from the Roman forces was required to control and subdue these territories, hence the additional military activity in these areas where the dodecahedrons have been found. You have seen the purpose for the knobs or nodules each corner. They support the plain text wheel and act as a mechanical positioning reference to keep the code wheel in register. They also perform a stable, repeatable positioning datum so that the wax sealing impression is always clean and consistent. You have seen exactly how the dodecahedron was used. The dodecahedron geometry was used for this purpose because it could give 12 possible coding options. A cube, for example, would only give 6. Some of the other platonic solids could give more than 12 options, but were much more difficult to manufacture due to the possibility of small errors in the angles or side lengths happening during the casting process, causing the whole geometry of the object to be defective and useless. As a result, the best compromise between the number of coding options and the final successful outcome in manufacture of the object was chosen to be the dodecahedron. There are no written records or pictorial references to the dodecahedron in history because it was a secret coding system, and it had to remain a secret from as many people as possible for as long as possible. Drawings of the dodecahedron and how it works, or written descriptions, would only help an enemy or code breaker. Hence, code operators were only trained verbally and by practical means. Well, I hope that you found my first YouTube video interesting and informative, and presented you with some compelling theories as to the use of the strange object. I would be interested in your feedback on the subject in the comments below or by email. I would be interested to make contacts with Roman reenactment societies to try and test this theory in the field if they would like to approach me by email. I would be interested to see if there have been any Roman wooden tablets that have been found that cannot be deciphered. For those of you interested in codes and ciphers, I will leave you with a challenge if you would like to provide answers by email. Are you not entertained?